Was not as smooth as last time. I'm Dion.
Hello, I'm Chris. I'm not playing any games right now. I'm not doing anything, but I'm here.
And today we're going to be discussing The Rise of Skywalker. My Emperor impression is terrible. Do not judge me. No, not multiplayer. I'm not. I haven't played this game recently enough to go on to multiplayer.
What are you playing?
Battlefront 2. Can't
Fitting,
believe I'm
fitting.
doing this. I don't even know what to do on here, but anyway. So, there's been multiple TV spots recently, and I have some opinions. So, one of the trailers, the 30-second clip of the desert chase scene. Why the fuck are they using bikes, like with wheels? I don't think that's very practical for a desert environment. Because the more downward force you exert, the more you sink into sand. So, using wheels, probably not the best idea. And we've already established that there's better technology in the universe. So, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only been, what, one vehicle that uses wheels other than
One,
these
two at a
bikes?
stretch, yeah. One being the Juggernaut, the two at a stretch would be the Sandcrawler, that's tank tracks, so that's kind of like half a point.
Yeah. So, in that case, if we look at the reason the turbo tank had the wheels, it was normally used in dense areas that had mostly rocky terrain. It wasn't really used in like sandy terrain. Kashyyyk did have beaches, but you didn't necessarily see it on the beach as much as you did on the sort of more grassy areas, because the tires had the grip and it had the suspension to work with that, and it using a hovercraft on that terrain might not be the most stable or safe, especially on a planet like Kashyyyk with all of those trees. Although that does beg the question, why did they use hover speeder bikes on Endor if that was the reason? But I'm waffling, trying to find some sort of excuse to, sort out the inconsistencies. But in this Rise of Skywalker trailer, you see um, Rey, Poe, Finn, C3PO on a
BB-8.
BB-8. Yes,
Might see Chewie there as well,
the
I'm not
the the
sure.
the the football,
Or the
but
Sarka bots, my American
they're
friend.
on some speeder thing. I don't know what kind of speeder it is. That hasn't been disclosed yet. I'm sure it will be done in the visual dictionary. And they're being pursued by four stormtroopers, two per bike. The bikes have wheels. Now, why you would want a bike with wheels in a chase is beyond me. Because in a world like ours, where most vehicles run on wheels and we're on the ground, it makes sense. Because turning corners, you'd be turning pretty much the same way. Whereas in this situation, the speeder will turn and go much quicker than the bike, because the bike has to worry about the the balance and stability, as well as the friction from the drift that it might have to do for a sharp turn in the chase, meaning it might take longer for them to turn, meaning it's less efficient. And if you also look at it, a speeder bike would end up possibly being cheaper on resources because you don't have to replace the wheels. Now, yes, I'm probably going into it a bit too much, but when there is established better technology, why revert to something like that? Like, it would be it would be like, I don't know, going from Beskar armor to Stormtrooper armor. And for those that haven't watched The Mandalorian, Beskar is blaster proof and can even take hits from lightsabers. And Stormtrooper armor, we all know how effective that is.
Like cheap plastic.
I mean, rocks being thrown at them is killing them or knocking them out. I'd be better off wearing a boxing headguard, which is just like leather and stuffed material on the inside. But that's not all from that specific trailer or clip, because then we see in what I think was actually a pretty cool scene, the stormtroopers using their jetpacks to jump up. It's nice to see jet troopers. I like jet troopers. I don't think they're used anywhere near enough in the Star Wars universe outside of, like, inside of the movies. Outside of the movies, obviously in The Mandalorian we've got the Mandalorians, who are famous with their jetpacks. And then in the Clone Wars and Rebels we see them. But in the movies they're not really seen. Like, we've seen Boba Fett with them and we've seen Jango Fett with them. But they never really used them too much. Like Django, it was only really two scenes that we really see him use it. One was in the fight against Obi-Wan, and one was going down to the arena to fight Mace Windu.
And getting murdered.
Yeah, and Boba Fett's going onto the barge against Luke, and then jumping down behind Han and getting knocked off the barge, which is actually really humiliating. But anyway, that's besides the point. Next in the trailer, we have C-3PO in surprise. They fly now! And then Finn, confused and almost as a question, they fly now? And then Poe turning around, they fly now. Why are they so surprised that there are jetpacks in Star Wars? A universe where jetpacks have existed for thousands upon thousands of years before this. In the oldest recorded Star Wars lore that I am personally aware of, there was still that level of technology. Like, I mean, what, like, Finn was a stormtrooper, so surely he would have some knowledge of that kind of technology being used, because as it was established, the majority of, well, supposedly the majority of the First Order army was on Starkiller Base, or was trained, or at some point functioned on Starkiller Base. So how do they end up being so surprised by seeing jetpacks, which was common in the Galactic Civil War between the Rebels and the Empire, possibly even more common in the Clone Wars with rocket droids and jet troopers, and of course bounty hunters, and then in the older Republic days, the Mandalorian Wars, where we have Mandalorians that are notorious, famous for using jetpacks, because it's one of their main weapons to be able to contend with Jedis being able to use the Force to, you know, bolster their movement. And I just don't believe that they can really be that surprised about jetpacks existing when they've existed for that long. So it felt like it was just used for cheap laughs, and it felt like it had no real point in being there. I just realised I've been sitting on the menu for so long ranting.
Good job.
But, like, I just don't really understand. Like, why is it such a surprise, and why is Star Wars just becoming cheap jokes? Like, most of the Disney Star Wars movies has just been cheap joke, cheap joke, cheap joke, cheap joke. Don't get me wrong, the original 6 Star Wars movies had jokes, but they didn't feel so weird. Like, these kinds of jokes just don't feel like they fit for me. Like, some people might find it amusing, but when they're deliberately ignoring certain parts of Star Wars to do it, I just don't understand it. What's your opinion, Chris, since I've been talking so much?
Well, I mean, cheap jokes. On the topic of cheap jokes, there have been some decent points throughout. Like, if I'm looking at the non-Disney era and the Disney era, that's how I see it personally. That's my way, and I feel like there's been more in the Disney, or obviously non-Disney, we had some pretty cheap jokes, like Jar Jar Binks. It's a pretty cheap joke. Right
And
there.
that was a universally disliked thing for quite a while.
Yeah, like, I can get along with Jar Jar, but it does become a bit irritating the more you watch the Phantom Menace. I'm like, shut the fuck up, honestly. Choke figure. I mean, nothing against the actor who did him. What's his name? Forget his name.
I do not recall.
Well, nothing against the guy though. Not his fault. But that's just. I mean, yeah, like literally just from that little Spotlight trailer. Come on.
Because, like, I do like humour, and I do think it does deserve a place in Star Wars, to an extent.
Yeah,
Because, no, we shouldn't just have serious stories that are Shakespearean in their speech, because that does feel... That was one problem I had with the original Star Wars movies. A lot of the time what they said felt unnatural. And using that kind of language in a real conversation, people would look at you weird. But, at the same time, just putting jokes in for the sake of jokes, it's not really smart dialogue. There's places to put your humour, and it's not in the middle of intense scenes where it just breaks the tension and takes away, you know, takes away from the tension.
Sorry, yeah.
Like, The Mandalorian. That is a perfect example of how to have humorous moments without it taking away from the show. I'm not going to talk about it here though, because Chris has not yet watched it.
I haven't watched it yet.
I will... In fact, while we're on that topic, there is a method to watching it without being in the US. It's a little tricky, but if you can get the specific arrangements sorted, then you should be able to watch it legally. So without sailing the high seas, although you can do that if you want, I will not judge you.
Not on the Titanic. Or Titanic. I wouldn't recommend such a method as that.
Yeah, so Put Locker, that's basically your Titanic. Or Showbox currently. I've heard a lot of bad things about that. But the way to do it without sailing the high seas is to download a VPN. Now, there are hundreds, there's so many VPNs on the internet that you can use. NordVPN is a very well-known one. And while you're on the VPN, you change the country of use to the United States, and then you should be able to go onto the Disney Plus website and download it. Now, from there, you will still have to pay Disney Plus, which unfortunately means you do need American billing details and an American address. So, if like me, you have a friend or family over in America, I have distant family in New Jersey, so that's sort of the link there. And basically speaking, you put their details in, you can maybe send them the money over by PayPal or something, and then they use their details to pay the subscription for Disney Plus. And then you'll be able to download it via the VPN and watch The Mandalorian as the Americans would, without having to wait till March 31st.
Also, ask for their permission first. Don't just do it.
Oh yeah, of course. You don't just steal. Don't steal that. Yeah. It's already questionable whether the VPN thing is actually, 100% safe. Like, I'm still somewhat,
apprehensive.
Exactly. Like, I am currently using the method. Otherwise, yes, I wouldn't have watched it. But at the same time, I'm not just like doing it for everything. I'm doing it for very few things. I didn't save the banking details on there purely because I don't know how secure. I didn't save the details because I'm not sure exactly how safe it is. And also, but it's still sort of a bit of a lawful grey area. It's not. It hasn't been openly, you know, condemned, so it's not. But a lot of people currently are doing it. I just killed myself with a grenade launcher. Great. But yeah, it's not openly condemned, and there are a lot of people doing it, which is what's making me lean towards the it's okay. But at the same time, I do believe that there would be some lawful implications about the usage of being able to change what country of usage it is. And so, for now, there doesn't seem to be a problem, but I would be careful and keep an eye out on, you know, the legal possibilities of it, you know, being wrong, just in case. So, use at your own discretion, essentially. But, yeah, I forgot what the initial point was from talking about the Oh yeah, the Mandalorian using humour. So, actually I will talk about it without spoiling anything. So, there's moments in the show where there are high tension, for example, combat scenes. Now, these are terrible places to put your humour. Because when you're, you know, trying to be humorous, as soon as you add a joke, it takes away the tension from the scene, and it sort of disconnects you from the stakes. So that's what not to do. What The Mandalorian does is it takes other scenes which would... So, for example, there's in a hypothetical situation, so I don't spoil the situation, two people are in a room and they're waiting for something. The person whose house it is, they're just sitting there minding their own business while their guest is just there. Their guest goes to pick up something fragile, and say this guest is a small child. So I'm referencing Baby Yoda. That's not really a spoiler because, you know...
I've seen the things.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen Baby Yoda yet, then you don't even follow the official Star Wars channel, like, Instagram page, so... But, so imagine this child picks up say, a piece of china. Not the country. A piece of... like, a plate. And starts messing around with it. And the way I'm explaining it is going to make it not funny. But,
Not very funny.
So... But I'm taking long because I don't have a script and I can't write scripts to save my life, so... But, so they pick it up. The owner of the house is like, put it down, that's not a toy. So they take it off them, they put it safely down, they pick the kid up, lift them up, and put them in the cot from the ruff of their jacket. Doesn't sound very comedic by the way I've just explained it, I know, but in the context of the show, it was a light-hearted scene that was actually decently humorous, to me at least. Although it might just be that I don't like small children. Cue the Anakin. I'm currently playing as Anakin as well, so maybe I'll try and find some younglings after this attempted invasion of Kamino. But yeah, it was a scene that didn't have the tension, because it wasn't like a combat scene. It didn't take away from anything. If anything, it added to the relationship of the characters on screen. And it helped flesh out the character, because it showed that... It showed, yes, the Baby Yoda is 50 years old, but it... Because, like, yes, we were already told that it's basically a baby for its species. But it showed that it's not, you know, 50 years old. It hasn't it's still curious about things, and it shows a level of humanity on the Mandalorian side, because he doesn't say anything, but you get the sense of almost a connection in that scene. And Chris, you'll probably notice it when you see it, but like, it doesn't innately feel like the Mandalorian's being like aggressive towards the Baby Yoda, as much as he is being sort of more like a parental figure of, no, don't touch that, that's dirty.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll understand it when I see it. That's all.
But using comedy in moments like that works far better than trying to add comedy in battle or chase scenes, especially when the comedy comes into direct conflict with logic, reason, and continuity. The Clone Wars is another prime example of how to add, you know, humour. Ahsoka and Rex's back and forth banter about, you know, in the pilot, about Ahsoka outranking Rex because she's a commander and he's just a captain. And Rex is like, in my experience, you know, experience outranks everything.
Yeah.
And their back and forth was more banter that in some ways was less comedic, but it still served a wider purpose to flesh out the relationship between the characters. And even between Anakin and Ahsoka, with Snips and Sky Guy, the little snarky nicknames. It's not like flat out jokes or incompetence on characters' parts, but it's still funny in situations. Like, when Ahsoka first came out with Sky Guy, yes, I was a lot younger, but it did make me laugh at the time. I did get a good giggle out of it, because I was just like, and then when he came out with... And then when he came out with Snips and how she would always groan about it, it was a charming relationship. It was a charming aspect to their relationship that isn't really explored so much with, like, Star Wars relationships, especially between Jedi, which is one of the main flaws I do have with Jedi, with how they're represented in the films, because they're sort of represented as sort of cardboard cutouts that can't really emote, which wouldn't really make sense, because when you think about it, they don't want you to have attachments, but you're gonna grow like you're gonna develop, you're gonna get attachments to your apprentice and your master and your comrades. It's natural. It's not something that you can avoid. It's just nature. You can control it to an extent. You can, like, temper it, but you can't 100% control it, which...
You can't nullify it.
They actually allude to this in KOTOR 2, that maybe one of the reasons... Oh, no, it was KOTOR 1, actually, Jolie Bindo. One of the reasons... Oh, well, he doesn't say any... It's sort of what I got from what he said, that love is not evil, and compassion is essentially, you know, love for everybody, like the way the Jedi practice it anyway. But, like, love isn't evil, and it will save someone, not condemn them. And that also, Treya's philosophy said about a lot of Jedi would fall to the dark side due to the Jedi's ignorance of dark side teachings and how people fall to the dark side. And in Legends, Luke understood this and even addressed it in his Jedi Academy by adopting certain dark side teachings and embracing certain emotions that the original Jedi would never do, because he realized that completely ignoring them left the Jedi unprepared to actually be able to deal with them. Because if you don't deal with the emotion, you end up just harbouring it, and it ends up coming back to bite you in the arse later. Obviously, that is not the terminology the great Luke Skywalker would be using.
I remember, it will come to bite you in the arse later.
But you get the point. Now, again, that sort of humour in the situation of Ahsoka and Anakin helped flesh out the relationship. And it also made us feel more when Ahsoka eventually left the Jedi Order. Because at the beginning, yes, she was a bit of an annoying brat sometimes. I didn't like her character at first, I know that much. But that was more down to, no, I just want to see Anakin and Obi-Wan, because I'm a little kid, I want to see what I know. But at the end of the day, when I started watching the show for what it, like, just without that sort of thing in mind, I started to really enjoy her character as time went on. Like, her character did grow on me. And when she left, because of all of the banter that she had with people, and especially the banter that Obi-Wan has with everyone, and I mean absolutely everybody. Exactly. There's a video compilation on YouTube that I think is absolutely brilliant. It's literally called Obi-Wan, the Master of Trolling. Like, it's a brilliant video, and it has some of the most comedic moments from the Clone Wars, which shows that comedy can be used, but not affect, you know, the show.
Yeah.
And it, like, in Obi-Wan's case, it's not all the time, like, developing relationships or advancing the story, but it shows his character, and it sort of, I think it gives more to the idea that he becomes this almost hopeful old guy in the original trilogy that we see. Because in the original trilogy, I always saw Obi-Wan as this sort of man who's struggling with, you know, sort of PTSD from the past, because, you know, of course he would. But at the same time, he's also sort of light-hearted and hopeful.
Oh, come on, Carl, roll over.
Which in many ways is what the Jedi should always have been, instead of, you know, cynical at anything that came their way. But anyway, we're not here to discuss the failings of the Jedi. We can do that another time. I have my own qualms.
A good question for another time.
Yes. But, yeah, comedy needs to be used in the correct place. In recent times, it has not been used in the correct place. Even Rebels. I believe, in hindsight, after rewatching it, yes, I've rewatched it, it's underrated. Its design choice is not as good as the Clone Wars, its stories aren't as strong, and it kind of almost relies on certain elements from the Clone Wars as a crutch, in my opinion, because of the fact that it has so many returning characters. But at the same time, it does have its own, you know, it has its own good things. It brought back Malachor from the KOTOR series, not Malachor 5 specifically, but even in the original canon, Malachor 5 was destroyed, so that would be impossible anyway. But even having mention of Sith holocrons, or the Sith, you know, temple thing that was there, that was, like, it expanded the lore in ways that the Clone Wars did. And I believe that that's something that Star Wars does need to start doing more. Because the main movies are sort of just focusing on generalizing, not expanding on what's already there, which is where they're losing their money. It's why the show is not, you know, working. Well, I say the series is not working currently, because they're focusing so much on trying to cater to everybody that in the end they end up catering to nobody.
Yes.
Now that is a slight play on the quote of, you can please everybody most of the time, or some people most of the time. So most of the people some of the time, or I can't actually remember how the rest of it goes, but I'm sure you've heard it somewhere. But basically my version of it is, in this context, they're trying to generalize for everybody. And for people that have never watched Star Wars before, it's fine. It works decently. But for even casual fans of Star Wars, in terms of that, it's pleasing Like they've spent so much time trying to please everybody, like previous Star Wars fans, SJWs, you know, political activists, all this, that they've ended up just stabbing everybody in the back in some way. Because, like, the SJWs don't understand this, but when they're campaigning for strong female characters and they're celebrating Rey, all the character of Rey has really done is diminished their cause.
Yeah.
Because that's not a strong female character.
Well, it is, just it's a shit way of doing it.
Well, no, because it's a powerful character, not a strong character. A strong character needs decent character traits. Anakin had the struggle between light and dark from the beginning. Like, in episode 1 even, they even say how his future is clouded and his thoughts dwell on his mother, and that he's fearful. These are all things that... These are all faults that he inevitably didn't overcome, but it was stuff that he had to deal with as a character. Characters with adversity are good characters. Characters like Rey, who don't have to deal with adversity, can swim in water even though they've never seen a body of water in their life. Not good character. Because there's no challenge. Like, in The Rise of Skywalker, there's no tension. Because she's gonna win. She's not gonna get beaten. We've already established Kylo can't beat her, because at best what he can do is put her at a stalemate. And when he's not putting her at a stalemate, she's kicking his ass. And they're bringing Palpatine back, and as much as I don't 100% agree with the idea of it taking away from, you know, Anakin's sacrifice, I do believe that, in a sense, it's gonna do the character massive, you know, massive disservice. Because in the original trilogy and in the prequels, he was this evil mastermind who was the most powerful there. And with Rey being, you know, the main hero of the end of the Skywalker saga, she's going to end up being the one to beat him. And unfortunately, in my opinion, what that's going to do is make Palpatine look weak. And that is very disrespectful to what came before. Because even in the original canon, they did bring Palpatine back from the dead. But it was done in a way that was respectful. And they did eventually end his story arc where he did die. He wasn't like some characters in popular culture, Albert Wesker, who keep coming back for the sake of coming back. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Wesker. Great character, just overused. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Resident Evil. But in the original expanded universe, he had clones, and that's how he survives. And Luke struggles to beat him, but does eventually beat him. So it's a struggle. Luke can't beat him straight away. They can't do something like that in this situation because Rey is already too powerful. She's downloaded Rey's training. That's just lazy writing. I don't care. Until they explain it in the movies, I'm not counting any explanation they give. Because even in the original saga, the 6 movies that came first, Anakin, he's the chosen one. Luke, the son of the chosen one. Obi-Wan, hard work. And assumably, you know, raised from birth. Yeah. Mace Windu, bad motherfucker.
Samuel L. Jackson, you can't exactly argue that point.
But anyway, that's the thing. Like, Rey has no explanation for her power. And yes, they might be able to do that in The Rise of Skywalker, but at this point, I believe it's too little too late. They can make it a decent movie, but it won't save the sequels. And it definitely won't save J.J. Abrams. And to quote Lando Calrissian, this is a message to J.J. Abrams. You got a lot of nerve showing up here after what you pulled. And I'm not referring to The Force Awakens. I'm referring to some comments that he's made in an interview requesting for fans to lower their expectations, essentially. We're not going to lower our expectations about a series that we have loved from childhood, thank you very much. And that's disrespectful for you to even suggest that we do that. Very smooth transition, me going through the menus to go to a different game mode. But yeah, what's your thoughts on the sequel trilogy and where it's gonna end?
Could have been something good. I feel like what is going to happen is it will be alright. There's going to be very questionable things done in it. You'll be like, was this necessary? Is that really how it should have done? Is that disrespecting a character? Probably. But I feel like I'm going to be at a point where my favourite movie from each trilogy will be the third one.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, Episode 3 is my favourite in terms of pure entertainment. But through the years, I've had 3 different favourites. The first Star Wars movie I ever watched, Empire. It's the first one I ever remember watching. The first scene I ever remember was the cave scene with Luke and Vader. First scene I remember from Star Wars. And then the second movie I remember watching, Return of the Jedi. So, at first, it was a battle between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Episode 1 and 2, they were cool. Episode 1 I mainly watched for the fight scenes, even as a kid. I'll be honest.
I like the fight scenes.
Episode 2, it was for the clones. I loved the clones. Still love the clones. Yeah. And also Jango Fett, I liked the design, although I did end up liking him more later because of, the whole Mandalorian thing, until George Lucas said that he wasn't a true Mandalorian, although I put that more down to he's not part of a Mandalorian clan, but he is essentially a Mandalorian, because he was friends with Mandalorians, and those Mandalorians wouldn't have been friends with him or associate with him if he wasn't a Mandalorian, in that capacity anyway. But anyway, not the point. When Episode 3 came out, it became my favourite movie. And that's because it had bits of everything. Because I loved Anakin in Episode 3, specifically. I don't really understand the criticism that people have for the actor. He might sound a bit robotic, but that's how you're gonna be when you've been trained to let go of all emotion for all your life.
Yeah, and you're struggling with what you've lived through from childhood as slave.
Exactly. If you could, so anybody that does want to criticize Hayden Christensen for being, monotone, you try and deliver what he delivered while trying to not feel any emotion. Not very easy when, if you're in that situation, because you've got those feelings, you don't know how to deal with them. But he's also still trying to be the best Jedi he can be. Throughout the movie, most of what he's doing is just trying to be a good Jedi. After he kills Count Dooku, I shouldn't have done that. It's not the Jedi way. Later on, he must stand trial. He must live. This is not the Jedi way.
Are you fucking serious? Sorry.
What happened?
On a race on GTA, when there's always that one person who's like, I can't win, I'm going to go around the track the wrong way.
Oh, yes. And then cuck everyone over.
Well, cuck everyone. Cuck me, basically. There's only 2 laps this race. The first lap I was leading by a fair margin. I've ended up in 7th because I got spun out by someone, back to 10th, crawled my way back up to 7th. There's this one person who comes around and hits me.
Wow.
Sorry, it's off topic. I ended the race in 6th. I'm pissed off. Continue. Let's continue with the running theme.
But yeah. So, Anakin's always trying his best, despite his flaws. And ultimately, yes, he does fail. But ultimately, in my opinion, that's more a failing of the Jedi. which Luke, the way I look at it is in Episode 6, Luke realizes those failings of the Jedi Order, which is how he's able to bring Anakin back out of Darth Vader, and also be able to pull himself from the dark side, because it was his love and, you know, faith in his father that brought his father back to the light side. Those kinds of attachments are forbidden in the Jedi, yet Luke didn't fall to the dark side, and it saved the Chosen One. And the sort of and even in, like, Episode 3 had the best fight scene in my opinion, period. Like,
Yeah.
The Phantom Menace was good, but my only issue with it as a kid was, oddly enough, not the over choreography, wasn't the characters involved, it was the fact that there was 3 people involved. I don't know why, but to this day I prefer duels that are one-on-one. Now, there are fight scenes that I have enjoyed where it's been one person versus many, but my favourite fight scenes are usually 1v1, especially when it's like a sword fight, or in this case lightsaber duel, because I don't know why, but I feel like the tension is much higher when it's 1 versus 1, because there is no innate advantage, especially in Episode 3, where these 2 people that have known each other for so long are so evenly matched that the duel, it was the longest duel in movie history, I'm pretty sure.
It is. I think I will double check that. I'm pretty sure Anakin versus Obi-Wan is the longest movie duel in history. Yeah.
It might not be the longest fight scene purely because of Avengers now, but in terms of like sword duel, I'm pretty sure it is. And
yep.
The choreography itself actually has a lot of technical accuracy. There's a YouTuber on YouTube, obviously, who the channel's name is Shadiversity. He's a very interesting guy. He does a lot of stuff on medieval history, sword fighting, and he did a breakdown of both the throne room fight scene in Episode 8 and the Mustafar fight scene in Episode 3. On the one hand, in Episode 8, he absolutely tore it to shreds because so much was technically wrong with it, but the Episode 3 duel had a lot of praise. There was some small issues, but nothing majorly bad. They still looked competent, which is probably why I enjoyed the duel so much. That's why the Duel of the Fates and Battle of the Heroes are so loved by people that watch it, because they look good. Now, there are duels that don't look good, in my opinion. Like, the Episode 7 duel, in my opinion, I did not like that.
No,
like,
it's just swinging.
I did understand what they were going for. They wanted to show the power that a lightsaber really has. But, unfortunately, what they ended up doing was just making Kylo somebody who supposedly had training, and Rey, who had been alluded to having some sort of connection to the Skywalkers, just made them look amateur and childish and crap. Like, while watching that fight scene, I'm just sitting there like, my 11-year-old cousin could beat you. And he doesn't even know how to hold a sword properly. Mainly because his hand can't fit around it properly.
He's too small.
But, yeah. Like, Episode 3 is my favourite from a pure entertainment standpoint. I have made this very long to explain. I don't know why I do this. I do this all the time when I'm explaining anything.
Yeah, I mean, not to be an arse, but yeah.
Get on with it. Yeah, it's always my holy trinity of Star Wars movies. It's Episode 3, Episode 6, and Episode 5. Not necessarily in that order. It's constantly switching depending on how I'm looking at things at the time. at this current moment in time, I reckon I'd probably prefer episode 6 out of the 3.
That's fair.
And it has mostly to do with the subtlety that it does certain things with. From the clothing that the characters are wearing to the lighting and the cinematography, a lot of things are told visually as well as through the actions and story, because the cinematography, that can tell as much of the story as the script can, believe it or not. I know there's some people there just like, oh, how does recording something tell, like obviously recording something is going to tell a story because you can see it, but it's not all about just seeing the story unfold. For example, you see Luke hiding and you see the light on his face and you see the shadow on his face. It's conveying the conflict that he has between the light and dark. And they do this very well in episode 3 with Anakin, constantly having him in and out of the shadows. When he's with Yoda, when he's speaking to him about his visions, he starts off in the light. When he gets told, basically, forget about it, it'll be fine, he looks down and his face ends up completely in the darkness. That's the kind of cinematography I'm talking about, using the lightning and the camera angles to convey meaning. Now, that's something that I learned in photography, because I did photography for a couple of years, and you learn that different lighting does convey different things. Like, for example, a Venitas edit is, most people won't know what that is, but it's generally quite gothic and conveys a lot of darkness. So it really is that kind of subtlety and those kinds of techniques that really sold episode 6 for me. Like, maybe I didn't notice it when I first watched it, obviously, because I was a really small child. Like, when I was born, The Phantom Menace had come out a couple of years prior, and episode 2 came out when I was, well, 1. But I don't remember watching that until after I watched the original trilogy. But yeah, that's the thing. I feel like my appreciation for the movies have changed, because now I can appreciate the subtlety that was used in the movies, the direction, the camera work, the subtle hints to things to come that I maybe wouldn't have noticed before. And I've rambled on way too much about this now. I could have literally just said, yeah, the cinematography is good because it conveyed certain messages that, could have been told by the script, but having the visual works well. Anyway, I'm not going to re-explain it because there's no point now. I'm going to end up starting rambling again, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, I just have one question though.
Go on.
When you said about your 3 favorite movies, I guess you could say, were you just counting trilogy movies or any movie under the name Star Wars?
Just Star Wars movies in general. Let me guess, one of yours is going to be Rogue One.
Well, because I was going to ask, if you had to watch 3, just, your 3 favourites, would it have been 3, 5, and 6?
Yeah, if I had to choose only 3 movies from Star Wars, it would be those 3.
Okay, that's fair.
Yes, there are other movies in the franchise that I enjoy. I did enjoy Episode 4. I did enjoy Episode 2 when it wasn't on Naboo. I don't like sand. And even as a kid, I didn't like those scenes, I'll be honest. Even though it went over my head, the purpose of the scene, I was bored, I didn't like it. Seeing Obi-Wan creep around was a bit more entertaining, but still wasn't very interesting. Clones on the screen, yay!
Everyone, clones on the screen, yes.
Army of Jedi, yay! Army of clones, yay! Army of clones and Jedi, yay!
Just the whole Geonosian, from the arena to the fight with Count Dooku, the bit in that gap. Yeah!
Most of the back half of that movie was brilliant. And if the rest of the movie was at least at that quality, it would have been better. Now, yes, I'm not saying that it needed to all have been action and clones and Jedi and, but quality. So no, I don't like sand. Like what?
Yeah.
I know he hasn't spoken to like a normal non-celibate female for 10 years, but come on. I don't leave my house enough to really know how to speak to females, and I wouldn't lead with that. Hello there is a better line to lead with.
I have led with hello there. I wouldn't recommend it, but sometimes it has worked.
Well, I mean, there was one app that's used quite a lot in the UK, Yubo, some of you might know it. A couple of years ago, for the laughs, I went on there and I popped up to someone with "Hello there," and they replied with General Kenobi. And
Oh, yeah, you did show
I'm
me
pretty
that.
sure I messaged you straight away, like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening."
I tried it, and it took a bit longer to actually get that out of them, but it did work eventually.
But yeah, anyway, that's not the point. What was the point again? There was some overarching point to me talking about favourite episodes.
Oh, because you asked me what mine were, or something like that.
There was something before that, I think. This is why a script is actually a decent idea. Even though I can't write a script, it'd probably take me triple the time between the last video and this one to do anything. Although the last video technically wasn't that long ago. No, actually no, it was pretty long ago, to be fair. Oh yeah, I was going to re-upload the video with both of our points of view in it, but the problem is the editing software that the editing software that I used, as well as the way I got the videos downloaded, made for a very poor quality. It ended up being like 360p,
Oh, that's not great.
and there was no way to make it higher. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to leave it the way it is. So we can even just leave like a link to your video in that one. Why am I going through what we're gonna do in the editing for it in another video? Anyway, that's not the point. I need to stop with this.
And you need to give me a minute. I'm just gonna go for a second, or a minute.
Okay. Okay, so while Chris is gone for hopefully a short while, let me know in the comments what you think about the state of Star Wars right now. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you really not care anymore? Are you just sort of weathering the storm and waiting for something better? And what's your expectations for The Rise of Skywalker? Me personally, my expectations are kind of eh. They're not especially high, but they're not ridiculously low. Like, I don't think it's going to be as bad as The Last Jedi. I don't think Disney would chance it if it was that bad. But at the same time, Rian Johnson, as much as he did a bad job, the J.J. Abrams has got a reputation for being not so good with finishing, and therefore I am apprehensive. And why wouldn't I be? So I feel like the movie is going to start strong, like the Force Awakens did. Aside from the comedy, it will start strong at least. So I'd say, so if we divide beginning, middle, and end to Act 1, 2, and 3, middle of Act 1 onwards, it's going to be good. Beginning to middle of Act 2, good. Rest of Act 2, meh. Beginning of Act 3, meh. End of Act 3, somewhat unsatisfying. That's my prediction for it. But Yeah, I don't really believe that it's going to save the franchise. I also don't believe that it's going to be a great movie. I don't think it's going to get anywhere near the praise that The Force Awakens did, although The Force Awakens got most of its praise at the beginning when it was pretty much brand new. But over time, there's just been more and more criticism of it because people are. I think the only problem with the way that people look at films at the moment, especially franchises like Star Wars, is, you know, they get clouded. Their judgment gets clouded by nostalgia. That was clear to me with The Force Awakens. I was never the greatest fan of, The Force Awakens. Mainly due to the fact that, it's just. It didn't really do anything, like, new. It was just the same thing. And there were a lot of other people that did share that opinion, but most people were just too swept up with, there's new Star Wars. I was admittedly expecting the movie to fail and sort of wanting the movie to fail because I was distraught over the loss of the expanded universe. But, at the end of the day, what can you do? Just gotta accept that Star Wars is not what it once was and just hope that it gets better. The Mandalorian is a good first step. But at the moment it is just that. A first step.
Is it now?
Yes, I was just talking about how I believe the Last Jedi, not the Last Jedi, the Rise of Skywalker is going to be. So, separating beginning, middle, and end into Act 1, 2, and 3, I said the beginning of Act 1 is going to be kind of meh because it's going to open with that chase scene and the comedy, and that's going to, well, this is like for me personally, it's going to sort of dampen the experience. And then mid-Act 1 to mid-Act 2 is going to be good, in my opinion. I think that will be good. But then the end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3, meh. And the end of Act 3 is either going to be bad or just dissatisfying.
Maybe.
And, like, I just said on the stream, the main reason for thinking this is J.J. Abrams has a very bad reputation for finishing things. Honestly hope that doesn't translate to the bedroom, otherwise his wife or girlfriend, whatever, is going to be very disappointed. But, yeah, let's just say fans weren't happy with what he did in Star Trek. Not that I'm not too invested in Star Trek, I never really watched them, but I heard lots of bad things about the J.J. Abrams one. And generally, there is, like, his main criticisms are he's not very original. He mainly just recycles what came before. He's spectacle driven and isn't very good at finishing stories. So he was perfect for opening up the trilogy. Opening with something familiar, but also giving lots and lots of possibilities in where the story could go. Which is what he did. But obviously Rian Johnson had to come in and fail. And now we've got Jar Jar Abrams for episode 9. And I'm worried because if he does try to recycle things again, it won't work. People are privy to it now. They're not going to accept it. And if he tries to do the Rian Johnson subverting expectations, they're not going to take it. There needs to be a balance between old and new. Which is kind of why I think that the TV shows like The Clone Wars, like The Mandalorian, work so well. They have the right balance. The Clone Wars, constant visual and visual references and quotes that sort of relate to the movies. Like, hello there. It was used in the Clone Wars. And then they even did a recreation of the sail barge scene where Luke salutes and then R2 shoots out the lightsaber. Only it was with Anakin. The Mandalorian, it doesn't so much have references as much, although it does have slight nods. Like there was a picture of a specific species in Star Wars. But like, it feels like Star Wars without copying, basically.
That's good.
Whereas the new trilogy hasn't done that. Episode 7 was definitely Star Wars, but it was too cookie cutter, too rigid, too contained, too safe. And then The Last Jedi didn't feel like Star Wars. It felt like a completely separate sci-fi franchise movie, which could have been good in a different franchise, but it was with Star Wars. It just had the Star Wars label on it with some skins. Didn't work, unfortunately. But yeah, the future of Star Wars, in my opinion, is clouded in uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I do believe that The Mandalorian is going to be a very telling sign of what's to come. Because The Mandalorian, thus far, is exceptionally, successful right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was set to be the most pirated series ever. Not surprised. But even on Rotten Tomato, which is notoriously bad for inaccuracies, I mean, they've got the Joker down at 44% from top critics, and it was not that bad of a movie. In fact, I rated it 4 stars on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, which movie was that?
Joker.
Oh yeah, Joker. Yeah.
Now on Rotten Tomatoes, I go on to the ratings, and for all critics, the score is 90% of critics have given the movie a positive review. And 95% audience scores. So 95% of the users rated it 3.5 stars or higher. And if we go to top critics, it only has 2 reviews so far, but at the moment it's 100%. So yeah, the reviews so far are extremely positive. And I believe the more positive feedback that they get for The Mandalorian, the more they're going to keep trying to do that. So there are some people that have been watching The Mandalorian that have some criticisms, though they don't really structure it in a review format, so it's difficult to really counter-argument it, but I'm going to go for it anyway. If it weren't for Baby Yoda, it would be completely boring. And I don't know, I don't agree. I think The Mandalorian is plenty entertaining enough. I mean, I'm going to try and not reveal spoilers, but episode 3, there's one specific fight scene which is bloody awesome. Baby Yoda or not, it was awesome. In fact, there was 2 fight scenes in that episode that were bloody awesome. And I do understand that some people might not be interested in, Mandalorians as a whole, but for people like myself who know at least somewhat about the history of Mandalorians in Star Wars, they'd be really happy that they're bringing in some of that original lore as well. And then somebody rated it 2 stars. Pretty hard to get into so far through episode 3. And I am a Star Wars and genre fan in general. A cute Baby Yoda is all it really has going for it, and that's not much. I wish Disney Plus would release the entire season instead of doling it out in pieces. Don't know what doling it out means. I think you mean rolling it out. At this pace, and with what little of interest, do you mean, and with what little of an interest we've been given to this point, it is difficult to stay interested in the show. I'll wait till the whole series finishes, watch it, and then come to a conclusion about this season. Now, the only problem there is, they're saying that it's difficult to get into, but they're not really explaining why. Like, both of these negatives, they haven't really said anything about why it's boring, or why it's hard to get into. Like, I can understand some reasons why. For example, one of the reasons that I could think of that someone might not like it is they simply just don't like Mandalorians. Like, as a culture in Star Wars, they're not a fan. And that would be understandable. Or they don't like they don't like the gunslinger aspect of Star Wars. They only really take interest in the Jedi. Again, fair enough. But when writing a review, you need to be able to come out with more than that. Although, I'll be honest, when I reviewed it, I did kind of just fanboy out a little bit. So, my review, well, it's not even a review, it was literally just basically a comment. I gave it 5 star. So fresh, absolute must see. And Chris knows how difficult it is for me to not be critical about something.
Oh yes.
Don't watch a movie with me, basically. So I basically wrote, "This is so far the best Star Wars I've seen since I was a child. It is a complete package that is short, sweet, and leaves you wanting more. From the casting decisions, story ideas, lore, and characters, the only thing I believe this show could change is how short it is. I would recommend this to anybody, Star Wars fan or otherwise." And I say that because the way that they've gone about it, you don't need to be a hardcore Star Wars fan to enjoy. My dad is watching it. He thinks it's good. And he liked Star Wars, but he never really, got into it. Like, he never watched it multiple times or, got into the expanded universe. And he's enjoying it. And like, some people I know, they aren't really fans of Star Wars because they're not really a fan of the whole fantasy aspect. Well, this show focuses more on, a bit of a darker, more mature story, which might cater to them a bit better because it's not aimed towards younger generations. But I do think I need to address the only thing I believe the show should change is how short it is. As much as I would like the episodes to be longer, because I would love to have more Mandalorian, at the same time I do understand if they did do that they would have more screen time to fill, and that would mean more filler and therefore more pointless episodes. I don't want that. And to be fair, the original Clone Wars animated show, the cartoon from 2003, they weren't long episodes. I mean, I'm pretty sure you were able to put them all together and essentially have a full feature film
Wow.
It wasn't long at all. And people waited ages for them things to come out. I only I only in more recent years actually found the final episodes because I mean I lost access to them when I was young because we lost our TV license because we couldn't pay. First world problems. But yeah, I mean I think the fact that it is short is good because they're having to get into it and establish things meaningfully, and they don't end up having to like drag things out for no reason, which is a problem I do have in some of my favorite shows, like other than The Mandalorian,
Yeah,
which I'm not
you got that.
I'm not looking to be criticizing them now, but purely because of the fact that this is Star Wars, and I'm not looking to criticize other series. I can do that on my other channel. But
I'll do it now. I will name them Arrow, Flash.
yes, okay. So Arrow and Flash have their filler episodes where they don't really do anything. For example, in The Flash, there was one episode where they basically just had Barry fuck off for an episode. Oops. Foul language, no monetization. We wouldn't be getting monetization with 30 subscribers anyway.
You got 30? I'm actually impressed.
Oh, most of this was back when I was Don Media.
Oh, fair play, fair play.
But I mean, so far I haven't had anywhere near 30 views on my videos. Not that I'm, looking for views. Maybe a little bit, please. Share the video. Subscribe, like, put the notification bell on, please. I
Spread it
don't
to your
even know what I'm
friends
doing
and
anymore.
family.
But yeah, I mean, like, say for example, points in this video where I'm just rambling for no reason and it's just pointless me rambling. Imagine that, but for 45 minutes. That's what some episodes have done in Arrow and Flash, which is
And The Walking
why,
Dead.
yeah, a lot of major shows do it, and sometimes they have to because they have to meet that quota, which is why The Mandalorian has it better. The pilot, 38 minutes long. Since then, 38 minutes and 33 minutes, if I remember correctly. They're not incredibly long. They're relatively short, so it keeps everything moving. We're not dawdling, and we're still able to get character development. And it's not like there's a lot of speaking either in the show. Like, the main character himself doesn't speak very much, but you can still get a sense of the character he is and the development that he's going through, which is something that not a lot of people would be able to convey in their shows. So they are doing very well with the shorter episode time. And the main reason I said about how they should change it to being longer is mainly just me fanboying out that I want more. That's basically the whole point in it. I just want more. But obviously, they've started on season 2. So, in that case, we will get more. Unfortunately, there are only 8 episode seasons, which I am not a fan of because I don't know how much they're going to be able to do in 8 episodes. Because, for example, in The Flash at the moment, they're almost splitting the season into 2 because of the crossover event that's going on. And the first 8 episodes is one story arc, and then there's the crossover episode, and then they've got the rest of the season to do a different story. The only problem I've had with this 8 episode run so far is they've done a lot of setup for the crossover, meaning that a lot of like, certain things in the actual story for that part of the season felt rushed, which I am hoping doesn't happen with The Mandalorian. And I'm hoping they don't end up doing it like how they did with Titans, for example. Because Titans season 1 finale, it was good, and it was a cliffhanger, but the problem is, the season 2 premiere ended up feeling like the season finale for season 1. It felt like it should all have just been one big season. And I'm hoping that they don't do that here, because with an 8 episode run, you don't have a lot of time. you're gonna have to go through things relatively quickly while also trying to develop things. And if they keep going at the rate they do, it's gonna be great. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what. We still have no real idea on what the overall plot is going to be, like what the overarching story is going to be. Like, people have theorized that it has certain things to do with certain characters that are in the story. But I think they should just keep following The Mandalorian. Just keep it based on the title of the show, Mandalorian. So, connecting with other Mandalorians. So, spoiler alert, Chris. It's not a big spoiler. But, there's the. So you can, like, mute me if you want before I say it.
Yeah, that's right.
They've got the Mandalorian Conclave, or Enclave. Don't know why people keep saying Conclave. Conclave. It's an Enclave. Or at least I think that's how they were saying it, and I'm pretty sure that's the way you'd normally say it. Anyway, that's not the point. I'm not here to criticise how people speak much. But, there's the Mandalorian Enclave where you've got a lot of Mandalorians, and I think it would be interesting to see how that Mandalorian earns the respect of them and connects them with other Mandalorians, and maybe even establishes a new Mandalore. Although we may have one, I'm not sure if they actually count them as a Mandalore, if they're just a clan leader, if this is even one clan or if it's a collection of clans, if they're going to re-establish that sort of original clan system. But, like, I think the first season should be based around that like him specifically helping that enclave and them finding a new home, essentially. So maybe working towards retaking Mandalore, because in Rebels we find out that the Empire is essentially taken over, and because this is set after Episode 6, them taking Mandalore would make sense, in my opinion. I think that would be a good idea of a direction for them to go, even if they don't take it back entirely, even if they just settle back on Mandalore, and then just build, and then as the seasons go on, they can build up the Mandalorian, group in the galaxy up again, make them a bigger faction, make them a power again, and then the show can move away from it being just about building up the Mandalorians to defending the Mandalorians, the threats that the Mandalorians face, like I don't know, the Imperial Remnant attacks them, and this is sort of their chance to reclaim their honor by defeating the Empire. Or I don't know,
There's
that
droids in there somewhere as well, isn't
in the show,
there?
yeah, the main character doesn't like droids, which is SJWs have been going, they're racist to droids. Is droid a race now?
Actually,
Yes, I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm not Asian, I'm droid. Makes no sense, does it?
you can't identify as a droid if you don't have any cybernetic parts.
And even then, you would be a cyborg.
You'd be General Grievous at best.
Identity politics has gone too far at this point. Look,
Oh,
I know.
that's something for a different channel.
Yeah.
Let me run that. I could rant about that till bloody Easter.
Yeah, I mean, it's already 1:05 in the morning. We don't want to be opening that can of worms.
Yeah, and I'm waking up at 6.
Well done. I mean, I'm waking up at 8, so it's not too bad.
Smiling while I cry on the inside.
But I mean, yeah, we can go into the whole SJW controversy in Star Wars another time. But I feel the main reason I haven't done it before, because I would have done it by now, trust me, is it's a dead horse that's been beaten way too much, and the more, coverage that those people get, the stronger case they get. the more exposure they get. The more people listen to them, the more successful they are. The less we talk about it, the more they just fall into just, what's the word?
Mass pile of shit.
No. Into the more they just become irrelevant, essentially.
Oh right, yeah. Yeah.
And in my opinion, that's how we beat a lot of the social issues. Force them um into irrelevance.
It'll take time, but it is doable. It'll just take a long ass time.
Like, racism has become a much bigger thing recently out of nowhere because people are talking about it more. And making people aware that there is that prejudice out there puts it in their mind that there is a prejudice against it.
And that is something I no, I don't agree with racism. No, I don't agree with that. But that's something I agree with. Like, you want to get some things to die down, so you don't talk about it, but talk about some things to bring them up so they get sorted. That's
Yeah.
something I agree on that point.
But I mean, I think that's one of the main problems with both identity politics and racism.
Identity politics is just stupid, is what it is.
Because identity politics is at a point where if you don't have a female lead or some sort of diverse lead, you're sexist, you're racist. That's it. That's what certain people are trying to say about the Mandalorian, even though the main actor is Hispanic.
Yeah, he is. He was
But
the
even if he was a white male,
Cowboys and Kingsman.
like, the thing is, he could have been any race, any gender. It wouldn't have made a difference. He could have been a blue female.
Ayla Secura. Back
Yeah.
from the dead.
Could have been a blue female. I wouldn't have cared. I would have enjoyed it just as much, and so would everybody else. Anyway, we said we weren't going to go into this.
Wait
But,
a minute,
like,
how did this
so- The issue is the loud minority that have a problem with the way identity politics is at the moment, with not enough representation, because they're so much louder and they're talking more about it. People are listening, and people are taking it on board. By listening to them, getting annoyed about them, we're giving them a platform. So if we give them as little of a platform as possible, they will fall into obscurity.
Yeah.
Same with racism, because if from an early age you tell your child, oh yeah, racism exists, it's bad, it's not good, yeah, they're told that it's not good, but in the back of their mind they're just like, they might think, why is there a prejudice there? And next thing you know, they're looking into all the reasons that there was prejudice against it, and they might even develop some sort of prejudice to it. Whereas if you never tell them if you just teach them, like, if you teach anti-racism to them in form of, there is no races, we're all just human, they're never going to know any different. They're not going to know to look for it, and if they do hear about it, they're going to think it's absolutely stupid because they've already got the idea in their head that we're all just one race. Which is the problem with how, representation is being treated. Because it's at a point now where movies are bashed if they don't have female lead roles. Which is ridiculous. Because, don't get me wrong, I like good female roles. That, like, a strong female character, you'll actually find guys will want to watch more than a male strong character. Maybe it is because of certain assets for some people, but generally, like, in my opinion, yes, I can relate to a male protagonist more because I am also male. But when seeing a strong female character overcome adversity and become a good character, I would feel for more, because it can show me the struggles that they go through without demonizing people, please. And like doing that in some younger stuff might be good, mainly because it does generate sort of like a respect from the start, yes, but it's all about how you do it. Have female characters? Yes. Have female characters and make them strong, inexpensive male characters? No. Because all you do then is start alienating the male population, which, statistically speaking, is the larger part of the cinema audience.
Generally, yeah.
And that's why movies like Captain Marvel have done worse than other movies starring males. It's not because it's a female character in the lead role. It's because it was basic. Captain Marvel was specifically made for feminists and for representation.
Yeah.
It was basically an anti-man movie. That was basically the point of the movie.
I
And
watched
therefore
it
it didn't work.
It wasn't terrible, but it was probably one of the weaker MCU films because it just felt like they were shoving that the whole time.
Yeah.
There were points where it didn't feel like that, like when like Captain Marvel or Carol Danvers and Nick Fury are, in quotation marks, held prisoner. But that was about it. And then
Yeah,
there's obviously just Nick Fury and Goose. I loved those bits. Those bits were great. About it.
yeah. I mean, the most common criticisms that I hear about it are not that it's a just real. It's not like The Last Jedi where it's just a bad movie. Although it's not a bad movie that has redeeming factors. It's a meh movie with good and bad parts. It's a meh movie because there's nothing really to it. Like, Carol Danvers doesn't go through any real hardship. She doesn't really prove anything to anybody. And at the end of the movie, she says to the guy, "I don't need to prove anything to you." And
Yeah,
that
it
line,
just takes away from the movie.
that line would be good if it meant anything, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And because she had no hardships to overcome, she didn't really have that much of a character outside of basically a statue. She didn't emote. Like, the closest to emoting she ever did was in her conversations with Nick Fury, and even then it felt forced by the part of Brie Larson because she didn't want to really be there with another man. But, you know, it is what it is. It had redeeming qualities, supposedly. I didn't watch it, so I don't really know. I'm just saying what I've heard from other people. I'm not really interested in the character, so I'm not really bothered with watching it. But yeah, that's the thing. Even The Force Awakens, like, The Force Awakens had more going for it because it was the return of Star Wars. It had nostalgia, it had spectacle, as well as the identity politics backing it up. But it didn't feel so forced in that movie.
No.
Until we had Rey suddenly be powerful out of nowhere. But even then, it wasn't really evident that that's why they were doing it until the backlash of the movie started and the director started saying, "Oh, you're just afraid of female empowerment." That was when it became obvious that that was why they did it. And then The Last Jedi, where every female character was all really good and righteous and the male character was just made to be blithering idiots.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? Ruin Johnson, are you not a man yourself? Have some self-dignity.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, identity politics is a can of worms that we should not have opened up at this time, and we'll go into a proper lengthy discussion another time, hopefully. But yeah, And then racism. People say, "Oh, if you don't like a character, it's because you're racist." People didn't like Rose Tico. It wasn't because she was Asian. There's no such thing as Asian in Star Wars. Earth doesn't exist in Star Wars, so Asia, what's Asia? But it was because her character was annoying and
Mm.
stupid. She didn't need to exist. And now in the next movie they're bringing in more characters.
It's a bit of a late push.
Exactly.
But it could work. I mean, as much as my hope over the first two movies has been shaken, there is still a little bit in me that has hope for the third one, but I am questioning why.
Well, I mean, I get you. My hope mainly comes from the fact that The Mandalorian did so well. But I don't believe that the hope that I'm feeling is for the upcoming movie. It's for what's going to come after, because they have no
Mm.
choice but to learn. We can only go up from here, or from The Last Jedi.
Yeah, true.
But like, for example, when The Force Awakens was first marketed, it looked like Finn might have been the main character,
Mm.
and that he was going to be a Force sensitive. I feel like that would have been a much better story, like knowing what we know about the characters at the moment, because he has more character.
Yeah.
Now, if we was to switch that and put Rey in that position, would I dislike the character more? No. I actually wouldn't care, because at that point she'd have character.
Mm.
And do I have less of it? Do I have no issue because, she's white and Finn's black? No. I couldn't care less about whether the character's black or white as long as it's not forced.
Mm. That yeah, I don't care about who they are or what they are, as long as you ain't trying to shove that down my throat. If you are,
Exactly.
then I'll have a problem with not everything about that, just that situation.
Like, forced gender switches and race switches, there's no need for them. There's enough
Mm.
characters in every franchise that's doing it to just use characters that have that diversity already. And it's not that we don't want that diversity,
Yeah.
it's that, you know, we want it properly. Like, and people will say, oh yeah, but the characters aren't like top tier characters like the rest of them. They can be made to be top tier characters. Look at the
Yeah.
MCU. How many B, C, and D tier characters that they elevated to A tier just through the movies alone.
Mm.
Black Widow, Hawkeye, their popularity went through the roof through the Avengers movies.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Hell, even Iron Man. As a kid, I wasn't the biggest fan of Iron Man, to be honest. But through when the movies came out, I was like, yeah, Iron Man. Even Captain America, I didn't really like his attitude in the comics as a kid. As a kid, I always thought he was too, like, prim and proper about everything. And by prim and proper, I don't mean like how it is in England, like, oh, prim and proper, Pinky out drinking the tea. I mean like just too by the book with everything. Until of
Yeah.
course Civil War.
Mm.
But in the movies, they made me root for him. They showed me the depths of his character. Now maybe I could have got that from the comics just by reading into their backstories, but at this point I'm a kid. I'm just reading what's there. I'm not really able to do the digging. I don't have the money.
Dig, dig, dig.
But that's the thing. They were able to elevate so many low tier characters to higher tier. To bring them to the level of your Hulks and your Thors and your Spider-Mans. And they could do that in Star Wars.
You could do. Will they? Mm.
I can list 4 strong female characters from the expanded universe that they could have made good stories out of. Shay Vizsla, who became Mandalore the Avenger, Bastila Shan, Satil Shan, Lana Beniko. In fact, I'm going to go some more. Mara Jade Skywalker, Jaina Solo. Hey, whoa, Leia. Because Leia in the expanded universe was bloody good. Mitra Surik, the Jedi Exile. Darth Treya. Darth Zana. I'm going to stop now because I won't stop. Otherwise. But yeah, the list is huge for the amount of female characters that they could have used.
We got tons available, and they're just like,
that have real stories. Rey doesn't have a real story. That's why nobody cares about her. And Kathleen Kennedy saying that there's no source material, I am sorry. I am sorry. But there are literally thousands of books, video games, fan films, YouTube videos, bloody fan fictions of Star Wars that you can draw inspiration from. And the worst part is, the fan fictions are better because they pay more attention to continuity than the actual movies. That's even comparing them to the prequels. And the originals, to be fair. But yeah, Kathleen Kennedy, I think it's clear she does not care about Star Wars. She cared about the politics. That was it. It was her own personal agenda. Nothing more, nothing less. She is not a fan of Star Wars. She didn't care about it. She didn't know about it. And I mean, all you have to do is look at her very diverse cast of all females to figure out how the stories ended up being what they were. Now, I'm sure not all of them are completely incompetent writers, but the ones that seem to have their ideas put forward seem to be.
There's a bit of hit and miss. Well, I say hit and miss, miss and miss.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the saga movies, because the standalone movies have been decent. Now, yes, they are somewhat doing their own forced diversity there. Like, in Solo, Han was, like, just basically following Kira. And they made Lando pansexual, don't know why. There was no point in changing his character to that. Otherwise, why did he try to hit on Leia? Well, I say hit on Leia, it's just kind of... I got those kind of vibes. And then Rogue One, it's headed by a female character, although it didn't feel forced. At least it didn't feel forced in that movie when they did that.
No, it didn't.
I mean, there's one episode of The Flash. It's the perfect example of what happens when you just have cringy identity politics. There's one episode called Girls' Night Out. And oh my god, it's one of the most cringe-worthy episodes of that season of The Flash. And possibly one of the most... In terms of the whole series of The Flash, I think there's only one episode that's more cringy, and that's the musical episode. So that's a bit of context. And basically, the plot of that episode is Barry and the boys go get drunk. Iris and the girls are left to deal with problems. The first thing they do, I can't get a hold of Barry. We've got this. We're strong women. Hashtag feminism. They literally say strong women and hashtag feminism.
Oh, God.
Multiple times. We've got this because we're strong women. Girl power. Hashtag feminism. I was just like, shut the fuck up. Show, don't tell.
That's a very good way of putting it.
That's filmmaking rule number 1. Stop telling your viewer what to think. Show them what to think. You want someone to be powerful. Don't just tell them that they're powerful. Show that they're powerful. And obviously, you got to show how they get there as well. Make it believable. So
Yeah,
instead
just
of
don't be like, and then they woke up and then they were the most powerful being in the bloody universe.
exactly,
What?
because like in that episode, it just tells us girl power, strong females. Just like I don't care now because you're telling me. I don't want to know. Just show me some bloody action. I don't care about politics. This is why I watch this shit, to get away from the shit world.
Hmm.
And then there's other games like, well, there's games. I mean, like KOTOR, Bastila Shan. You go to rescue her. She breaks herself out of the cage. She saves herself, and is constantly an independent woman throughout the entire game without feeling like an SJW, without feeling like it was crammed down my throat. It felt natural, it felt normal, and it was justified. And she still had character flaws, and she still ended up being saved, but she was still not a weak female character. She was still a strong female character, and she saves you multiple times. In fact, she saves your life before the game even starts.
Hmm.
But that's a big contrast there between like basically telling us strong women and showing us strong women.
Yeah.
And that, in my opinion, is what's causing the downfall of a lot of franchises trying to cater towards SJWs and identity politics. Terminator Dark Fate did it, and the results speak for themselves.
Is that the new movie?
Yep.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it hasn't gone well. Spoiler alert. They kill John Connor in the first 10 minutes.
Right, who's John Connor? I haven't watched him.
So basically, okay, this might get a little confusing. In Terminator 1, you see a scene from the future. The Resistance fighting against the Terminators. The Resistance is led by John Connor. The Terminators send Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is a Terminator, is basically a robot with human flesh over it, gets sent back in time to kill John Connor's mum. And the Resistance sends Kyle Reese, who is a soldier, back in time to save her. And he ends up becoming John Connor's dad. Well, he dies, but he impregnates his mum, so still dad. And then Terminator 2, again, in the future, John Connor is leading the Resistance. The Terminators send back another Terminator. And the Resistance reprograms a Terminator and sends that back in time to protect him. Now, in Terminator Dark Fate, straight after the events of Terminator 2, like basically the flashback is set just after John Connor gets killed by a Terminator. And bear in mind, in the second one, they defeated the big bad. They destroyed Skynet. Judgment Day doesn't happen as we know it. But now, a new Judgment Day happens, and a new evil corporation called Legion takes control instead. And they basically just do the same thing Skynet did, and the only difference between the Terminators then and now is now they're different colours. They're grey instead of silver.
Oh,
and
big change.
Now the person that needs to be protected is a female, and the person that's gone back in time to protect them is a female, and the villain of the story is a male. That's another thing. Look at almost every movie now that's coming out with a female as a lead. The villain is going to be a male. Mostly a white male. Not all the time, but mostly.
Mostly.
Star Wars, Kylo, white. The Emperor, white. Hux, white. Terminator Dark Fate, he's not white, but he is a male. Even Wonder Woman, which was a good movie, it didn't push identity politics too much, even though it did somewhat dabble in feminism. It didn't do it too much, and it did it in a natural way. And the villain, white man. Captain Marvel, villain, white man.
Mm.
I'm seeing a little pattern here. But yeah. Bless you. But yeah, the way to make a group look better is not by demonizing everybody else.
Mm.
That's how you make them look worse. In terms of a personality standpoint, because it makes it just feel like they're saying, yes, we're better than you.
We're better than you.
Which is wrong. Yeah, anyway,
I should probably
it's been nice doing this, but I'm going to have to sign off because A, I really need a toilet, and B, I'm really going to need to sleep soon.
Yeah.
So, this has been Star Wars Media, and I'm Dion.
Hello.
And, yeah. And, I'll be seeing you guys next time. How do I actually stop the broadcast? I don't even know.